Hey, everybody. Welcome to Alumless. I am Ryan Catherwood, and that is Chris Marshall. Thank you for tuning in. It is Friday. We are experiencing just a little bit of technical difficulties, bringing our first guest, our only guest, our special guest out to the stream. So we are excited to have Lyndsey join us when her technology is going to allow for it. She's asking me to resend her the link right now, so I'm going to do that.
While we're in the
And
live show, I'll
while
cover
we're in
for
the
you.
live show, so let's do that. I'm gonna
Hey,
hit
while you're
this.
doing that, Ryan, I'll shout out to Matt Winston, who already jumped in on the chat. I'm here and ready to receive knowledge. So hopefully you'll get some knowledge, Matt. If we have to, it'll be from me and Ryan, but much better if we get Lyndsey on here. Well, it looks like it's going to work.
We'll
And
make it work.
anybody else who's on, jump in on the LinkedIn comments or in the comments on the YouTube and just add a hello and let us know where you're from and what you're up to. Or if you have a question, we're going to be talking about campus partnerships today. If you have a question for Lyndsey or for us, jump in with it and we'll respond.
And we are grateful for Max Leiston and the team at Protopia for sponsoring the show. It is incredibly a pleasure that we have to share more about Protopia with our listening audience. We as engagement pros are always thinking about how to create more volunteer opportunities. Why is that? Because there are many reasons, but the big one is that volunteers give at 2 times or 3 times the rate. So this is incredibly important, particularly for those alumni leaders working in integrated advancement models. And we're trying to build a pipeline of donors. And at the same time, students throughout the educational journey have questions and could use the advice of alumni. And as engagement pros, we're asked to figure out ways to make the alumni network available from prospective student to former student and develop partnerships across campus that will showcase in real terms how valuable the alumni network can be. So that's what Protopia solves for. Without requiring alumni or students to sign up for another app or platform, Protopia's AI-powered technology activates alumni and turns them into volunteers in a flash. Students and alumni seeking advice are connected while removing the administrative burden of the staff. Protopia is the tool you've been looking for. Visit protopia.co/alumless and be sure to mention that Ryan and Chris sent you. And while I was reading that sponsorship promotion from Protopia, Lyndsey joined us. I can see her in the bottom of the screen, which is fantastic. So we are all systems go here for another episode. I'm psyched to have
Matt will
Lyndsey
get his
on the
knowledge.
Yeah, I'm psyched to have Lyndsey on the show. I did a Protopia webinar a couple months back, and Lyndsey was just an excellent speaker and guest. And so I'm really excited to share her thoughts with everybody. I know she is too, and we'll bring her out here in just a minute. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast edition of Alumless. It is an additional 30-minute segment with all of our special guests, including Lyndsey for today. But you got to subscribe to the podcast version using your favorite podcast app. Yeah, we're going to do the Friday Cheers again today, and should be fun to talk about some tangentially related engagement stuff. But sometimes we share our favorite books, movies, things that we've read or been listening to. But Chris, let's get the conversation started. Thinking back to your time at Lehigh and Cornell, was there one particular partnership that you had with another unit within advancement or perhaps across campus that you were really focused on strengthening?
Yeah, I'll start. I'll keep it on Lehigh. It was my first experience, and as most folks know, or maybe know, I spent 12 years career in athletics. So when I went over to the alumni world, natural first partner was everyone and anyone in the athletic department. So we had a very close working relationship. Athletics is a big part of lots of institutions, alumni engagement work, and that was an opportunity we just took full advantage of and worked well because I knew everybody and there was trust established there, and that's the most important part, getting to know the people, establishing trust and communication lines that can allow for the collaborations to happen. I think the other one that built very quickly was over in admissions. We had a very strong admissions alumni group of 6,000 volunteers that were involved in some way of helping interview or recruit or matriculate students to come to Lehigh at the time. So great partnership with admissions, but within advancement, the interesting structure we had there is that I wasn't a VP, but I reported to the president. and so did the VP for development. And that person was Bonnie Devlin, who's a lifelong friend now and CEO, principal, or I should say managing principal of Washburn McGoldrick, our partner firm. So we're still working together to this day, 20 some odd years later. But Bonnie and I had a very close friendship and working relationship, and everything we did was in lockstep, and we built very much an integrated model. Didn't know I was doing it at the time because I was brand new to the industry back in 2001, but what we were doing, I can go back to and point, was building an integrated advancement model. And it was a critical partnership for me to have and learning in the early stage of my career.
Yeah, that's great. I have to admit, Chris, building campus partnerships, I don't think was ever one of my strengths.
Yeah.
I think it was some of the things I always was focused internally, right? Yeah. Whenever there was a problem, whenever there was something to be done, I was like, all right, how can we better utilize this team and do more and adjust? And I'm looking forward to hearing from Lyndsey because, I have to admit,
we're really good at this. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. And it does take, effort and determination over the long term to establish different partnerships. And if I were to go back in time or perhaps the next time, it would be something I'd be really focused on. So
I tell clients real quick before you introduce, here's my ratio. I tell clients on an average over the course of a year, if you take the 5 days of the week, 1 day you should be on the road out meeting alumni. 1 day you should be out on campus meeting your partners, and 3 days you should be in the office running the operation. So it should be 20% of your effort over the course of a year. I know I didn't do that early on. It sounds like you didn't either. So let's hear what Lyndsey did.
Yeah, I definitely could have done better with that. All right, let's welcome to the show Lyndsey Crum. Hey, Lyndsey, how's it going?
Hi, it's going great. How are you both?
Doing great.
We're doing great. You sound good. We're glad to have you. Lyndsey is the Assistant Vice President for Alumni and Community Relations at the University of Northern Colorado. Beautiful backdrop you have for your work there at the university. And
that's right out her window. That's not a virtual background.
I wish. Although we do have a great program where we take our students up into the mountains, outdoor pursuits, and it's the time of year that the colors are starting to change in the mountains of Colorado, and it just felt like the perfect background for today's conversation.
Beautiful. Great to see you. Thanks for being on.
Good choice. Yeah. Well, Lyndsey, to follow up on my question to Chris, I know you've been really working on strengthening campus partnerships. It's what we decided we were going to focus today's show on. Can you talk just a little bit about your work, forging relationships, particularly with team members across advancement?
Sure. And I love that Chris mentioned he worked in athletics, because I think of advancement as a team sport. Holistically, that's how I coach our new team members who are new to advancement to think about it. But what's fundamental is understanding what game we're playing. If I say we're playing football and half our folks think American football and the other half are thinking soccer, we're never going to win. And if we are all trying to play the same position or we're not working from the same playbook, we're not going to score. So I think, kind of leveraging that athletics analogy, I think that is so important to how we build relationships and partnerships in the work that we do. And when we can understand the gameplay that and the game plan that we're working from, we can accomplish some pretty amazing things. And that's why I love talking about partnerships and integrated advancement. And I am so delighted to have amazing partners at UNC's Advancement Services team, without whom there is no way that I could do the work that I do. And I'd love to give a little bit of an anecdote. When I started about 9 years ago, I went to our data team to help me pull out a mailing list for our honored alumni ceremony. And I asked for a segmented list targeting alumni of different identities based on who was being honored. And our data team was like, no one from alumni has ever asked us to do that. Like, that's like asking annual giving segmentations. And I said, well, but we have the data, right? They're like, yeah, but nobody's ever asked for that from your area. I said, well, let's give it a try. Let's go for it. And for them to be approached and asked to contribute to work outside of something that they hadn't done before and valued for their expertise, I think laid the groundwork for some really amazing partnerships that have grown and developed even as the staff have changed. And over the past few years, the Advancement Services team and I have been working on mapping and tracking our alumni data, our alumni career data, in support of prospect management, career pipelines, marketing, recruitment, career readiness. And just recently, about a month ago, we launched the public access to our data visualization of alumni careers. So a completely interactive Power BI tool that anyone in the public, as well as campus partners, can access to understand alumni career pathways. And it's dynamically linked to our alumni donor database. And there is no way that we could have done that if we didn't have a strong partnership and appreciation and a shared game plan for what we were doing and how.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And I think more and more the relationship between the engagement team, advancement services, as we're thinking about the tracking of activity, the idea of journey mapping, the idea of engagement scores, right? It really is incumbent on alumni leaders to forge relationships with that part of the advancement shop. Lyndsey, what about partnerships across campus? I'm sure you think about those often. You alluded to athletics kind of in the lead into your first response. How have you prioritized those relationships and why? Because, in reality, I feel like every unit on campus should have their own alumni engagement strategy. And it's just a question of how do you prioritize time and energy?
Yeah. Well, everything is an opportunity cost when we boil it down. And I love my university. It's my undergraduate alma mater. I will bend over backwards if I can. But at the end of the day, my responsibility is to advance the institution in the most strategic way. And so I do have to prioritize how we spend our time, our partnerships. Chris, I loved how you talked about the, spending time across the 5 days of the work week. And I look at what is it we're trying to accomplish through our strategic plan? What are the division operational goals? And where are those partnerships most critical? And it doesn't mean that I don't care or respond to other needs from across campus, but enrollment and student support is our primary focus at the University of Northern Colorado. Our strategic plan outlines students first, and that is a mantra that goes into every decision that we make. How is it supporting and advancing our students and their educational access and equity? And so I will prioritize working with our academic deans. I prioritize working with major gifts because of the initiatives to increase scholarship support. Certainly annual giving and advancement services because the data underpins all of that. And I really try to help provide coverage by also doing more of a tiered system. So I personally spend my time on the most important partnerships, and then I try to do some self-help and infrastructure to allow other areas to help themselves within the same ecosystem so that it doesn't feel like they're floating off by themselves, because we can't do everything, but we can help people accomplish their goals if they understand how they fit into that bigger system. It's kind of a tangential answer.
Who are the groups that you work with that you prioritize that in your
portfolio? Career foremost.
Yeah.
Admissions, but I've started to transition some of that work onto one of my colleagues on the alumni team. And I know my academic partners may not appreciate hearing this, but athletics and the College of Business are the two priority areas because of the development portfolios that align with those different constituencies. It's important that I provide support and pipeline development work where we have really strong opportunities for major gift development and volunteer leadership development. And those are two areas where we really need my time spent. It doesn't mean other areas are not important, but I'll plug in other team members to support other parts of campus and use my time when we're really developing the high level relationships that are going to lead toward whether it's principal gifts, major employer partnerships, and strategic relationships.
Yeah. It's one of the many balancing acts because you wear many hats, but in this particular hat under campus partnerships, the School of Business dean loves the time she gets with you, right? But the other colleges, deans or from the other colleges or schools are going, well, how about us? And that's another, you got to make sure you balance it. It's hard to do that. I know it is. But
it is hard.
Yeah. But your justification is dead on. I mean, from a strategic standpoint, you do it because that's where we have the most potential to gain from those relationships. And that makes absolute sense. So in this context, let's talk about goal sharing. Have you seen these partnerships established and deepen and be successful because you've had a shared goal? I mean, shared goals are what can drive success ultimately. Have you had those in place?
Absolutely. And of course, universities will often create shared goals through the strategic planning process. But one of the things that I'm most proud of at UNC is the strategic planning process actually codified the existing partnership and shared goals of alumni relations and the Career Center.
Right.
So
Fantastic.
we've been working together very closely for the past decade. As I mentioned, that's my top partnership. And the work that we've done is so instrumental into the success of our students that it was intentionally put into the strategic plan, not because it's something new, but because we want to lift up what's already working and working well. And
Right.
I'm so proud of that.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic.
One of the things that I think that's interesting is that the Career Center office has really great partnerships often with individual faculty members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Individual faculty members who prioritize career-based narratives in their classroom, right? Or as part of their assignments. And oftentimes want to have the alumni network as part of their component, that narrative, and talk about the importance of it. And so, getting into the classroom, getting the importance of the alumni network in front of students often relies on working with the Career Center to work with those faculty members who often prioritize the alumni network as important. Which I think is an interesting dynamic at a lot of campuses, but I'm sure you've run into that with your work with the Career Center. Things are often made tricky by the fact that staff members come and go. Lyndsey, as you know, that there is a reasonably high turnover rate in our field. I think it's fair to say, and then making sure that new hires are able to pick up where those individuals left off. Keep the collaborations going. What have you learned about creating sort of transitions and plans to keep these relationships going as seamlessly as possible?
I think about that a lot. Actually, a
Great
lot in the last year in particular, because I've filled basically every team's position once over, and just in the last year, with the exception of one person. And so understanding how to sustain collaboration and culture is huge. And I think is an important part of any team leader, whether you're a new team leader or a longstanding team member, and not taking that effort for granted. And to me, it begins in the search process. When I have an open position, I'm thinking about the search committee composition and interview schedule based on what partnerships and individuals is this position going to work closely with. I went buy-in of those existing employees into the person that I ultimately hire. But I also want any candidate who's experienced in the interview process with our team to understand from the very beginning that my expectation is this is a team sport. We work together, we collaborate, and you're going to experience that from the very beginning of the search and recruitment process throughout how we plan our annual work. I've begun asking team members to also think about in their annual plans, succession and transition. If you're out on leave unexpectedly, if you end up getting a promotion, who's going to take over your work? Does your work or a pause in your work impact the work of your colleagues? And start to map that out really intentionally, because I think that shows respect and consideration for your colleagues and the nature of collaboration. But I think it also gives us an opportunity to reflect on, am I doing the right things to build a collaborative culture? Am I doing the right things to help move things forward? Or am I only doing what's comfortable to me because it's convenient? And I think that thought exercise is incredibly important. That's why I spend so much time on it. I'm highly protective of the culture that we have built on our team, and the culture that starts with our vice president, Allie, who has been on our team since 2005 when she started as the associate director of alumni relations and has worked her way up.
How long have you been in your role, Lyndsey?
9 years.
9. And over your time there, have you found that your collaboration, like the search committee idea, is a great starting point? That's such a great suggestion for the listeners. But are you finding it's being reciprocated? So when they have a vacancy, you're being asked to be on those committees as
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm very grateful for that. It's a practice that we've instituted within our advancement division, and our division has grown. We were separately development alumni relations division, and then a division of university Relations, which was essentially marketing and communications. In 2019, we merged those divisions under advancement and started pulling together some of the same practices. And then we also see that with our campus partners when the Career Center was hiring for their new director or their associate director. We've been involved in either the search committee or the interview process. We're invited to meet with partners for academic leadership positions, for student services. I mean, pretty much every position we've been given an opportunity to meet with candidates, and I'm very grateful for that.
It's such an important thing. And if it becomes part of your expectation as a leader, that bleeds into your team, it becomes part of that culture, it just sets it up. And then you throw in all the shared goals and everything. It's such a healthy way to approach it. I love your tips you're giving here. Well done.
Thank you.
Lyndsey, I wanted to ask you about community relations, because your title is Alumni and Community Relations. And we've been talking about, advancement partnerships and collaborations across campus, but you, in fact, are also thinking about the greater community where you are and live. How are you thinking about that? And what are sort of the important partnerships or collaborations that you've been thinking about as far as the community goes?
I appreciate you asking, Ryan. I just mentioned that we merged university relations with development alumni relations. Part of that merger was moving the community relations function out of the marketing team and under my area. And Allie made that move intentionally because many of our alumni live and work in our surrounding community and in our region. And many of the organizations that we need to partner with, whether it's for enrollment partnerships, career partnerships, industry partnerships, civic advocacy, are led by UNC alumni. Their workforce are made up of UNC alumni. And so if we want to really appreciate and honor those partnerships and relationships, we can't divorce the fact that they're comprised of UNC alumni. And so when we can coordinate that effort together and think holistically about that relationship, some pretty amazing things can happen. And so it was a natural move under me because of the nature of the constituency.
That makes sense, and it probably depends on each university. We've worked with a lot of partners, Chris, and I can honestly say that I can't think of another one right now where the alumni leader was also sort of the community relations leader. I'm sure there are others. I'm sure you've worked with those, but broadly speaking, what do you think about that work underneath the role of the chief engagement officer?
I would love to get Lyndsey's take on it. See if my answer is related to your own experience. But here's my take on it. I think it's a natural fit in that the skill sets that are needed for it are very similar, right? So that makes sense to me. I'll give you one example of who's leveraged this quite well, and he's amazing at it, is formerly Matt Borowick at Seton Hall was the head of alumni and government relations. So he was doing the federal and state lobbying at Seton Hall and was doing them well because he had that right skill set. He could manage both. My worry, though, and I bet is what I'm curious what Lyndsey will say is the creep of that role. Can you really be an alumni leader and do what's required of an alumni engagement professional and still have that in your portfolio and do both well? I bet it's like a constant juggling act. Lyndsey, what do you think?
Lyndsey, is part of your job suffering because of that? Yeah.
I'm sure there's always part of my job that's suffering. There's like I said, there's an opportunity cost to every decision that we make.
Great point. Yep.
And so I would say that I pride myself on making well-informed strategic decisions. I am a highly contextual thinker. And so I look at the whole picture and all the pieces, and then I make a decision on how best to spend my time. If our community was not predominantly led by UNC alumni, I probably would not be as enthusiastic about having that portfolio of responsibility because it would take me away from developing and sustaining the relationships with our alumni that I need to for the university. But because so many of our alumni are here in our local community, I would be ignoring them if I wasn't spending my time with those community leaders.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very based on the environment. I've worked at 2 other universities prior to returning to UNC, and neither of those would this be the right model.
Yeah, I think it's institution type and the demographic of the population, but also I think it's the skill set of the person in your role. It takes there's a unicornish like skill set to do what you're doing. And so kudos to you. In fact, let me read. I got a text from one of our participants. I won't give out the name, but the person said, "My God, she is articulate, strategic, and impressive." Was the feedback we got on your part of the show here. So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. And she manages campus events, right?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot about that little bit. Right. You
Yeah.
soccer coach too. What else you got?
Yeah, we have commencement in the president's events. So
I may have pitched Lyndsey a few roles at other places along the way, but she loves her alma mater and seems really happy at. Listeners, I don't think you're likely to be able to steal Lyndsey from the University of Northern Colorado, even though you may be looking for someone with her array of skill sets.
Amazing. It's amazing.
I do want to add one final thing about the is it the right mix? I think the other thing that is helpful is leading through influence. And I think an alumni relations leader ought to be able to do that if we're leading volunteers already. I really want to build up the capacity of my colleagues, whether that's my colleagues on campus or my colleagues in the community. And when you can build the capacity of other people to work toward that shared goal, you actually can really leverage and scale what you're trying to accomplish. If I tried to do every little thing myself, there's no way that I could do it all. But when I can build the capacity and lift up other people who have the opportunity and strengths to contribute towards something, and I can see the talent and strength that they have and build and develop that up, we can do amazing things together. And I think a good alumni leader should be able to do that and take that same skill that they do in volunteer development and apply it to the relationships that they have on campus and in the community.
Yeah, you have a political career ahead of you too. You're so astute in the way you could do it. I mean, and I know what you say you mean. And one of your colleagues just came online and said Lyndsey's definitely a unicorn. We're so lucky to have her leadership. Leadership is the word I was thinking of as you were answering that question. So
thank you.
Yeah, well done.
So what would you say is your top priority for this year? You've got a lot of partnerships in mind, a lot of initiatives in mind. What partnership are you prioritizing the most in order to sort of move the whole operation forward?
It's going to continue to be career.
Yeah.
It is something that touches everyone, and not just the Career Center. Where I'm really excited is that our colleges, this is another way I can support the academic partners, even our athletic partners. And you mentioned, Ryan, earlier that the Career Center will often have these great relationships with faculty and faculty who believe in incorporating career readiness into the curriculum. Absolutely. And I'm very grateful that my career colleagues have those relationships, but they can't do it alone. And so they need me to support them and lift them up. And the deans are looking for that from the Career Center. The faculty are looking from that. Although we're a Division I athletics school, the majority of our student athletes do not go on to play professional sports. They go on to have meaningful careers using their UNC degree in education. And so when we can tie those things together around career outcomes and the outcomes of their education, we can do some pretty big things and pretty powerful things, and that's exciting. And that all started in the genesis of the relationship and partnership with the Career Center.
That's awesome. And there's so much to do in that relationship, right? From the alumni who are trying to recruit at the university to those alumni who are talent, human resources professionals, to volunteers who want to help students, to those young alumni who need help, and there's just so much opportunity to build out engagement strategies with career in mind. Lyndsey, it was been great to have you on the show. Our live show has come quickly to a close. We'll move things over to the bonus segment. Thanks to the team at Protopia for being our presenting sponsor. We really appreciate that. For those of you who have not had the chance to check out Protopia, definitely be sure to go to protopia.co/alumless and check it out, because everyone ought to know about it. Chris, before we depart, who is our next guest?
Another extremely thoughtful, kind, and articulate leader, Mark Davis from UC Santa Cruz. So he has an alumni engagement background from Northern Arizona, Rice University, different roles for a while. And then he went to Carnegie Mellon as the number 2 to Scott Morey, who's going to be a guest of ours in the future as well. as a campaign lead, and then he took the VP role almost 2 years ago at UC Santa Cruz, and he is an amazing guy. Don't miss next 2 weeks from now, the next episode.
So Mark is Vice President University Relations. Is that right?
Correct, but it's similar. It's an advancement shop with marketing, communication. It's the whole.
Yeah, it's a big unit. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for those who've been listening live. Thank you for tuning in. We're grateful for you listeners, and we will head over to the podcast to do our bonus segment with Lyndsey, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with Mark Davis. Thanks for listening, everybody.